What changed everything in the blood industry was the first Gulf War. In the first Gulf War, we had multiple armies in multiple countries supporting the Allied side. They were all bringing their blood into Saudi Arabia, and it was all marked differently. Very little of it was barcoded, and what was barcoded was typically in Codebar and in national systems. There was a little bit of code 39 being used by a blood bank in Puget Sound, which actually was a very good idea for the time. But the real issue was nobody could read it. And I remember talking to an Italian soldier who was working with one of the Middle Eastern armies, and he went to treat a patient, and the patient needed blood, and so he asked the nurse to give him a bag of O negative. And she went and got a bag, and it was all labeled in Arabic. There was no barcode. He had no idea if this was the right product to use and whether it was, within expiration date and everything else. So after the U.S. Navy basically took over the identification of all these products from all these countries in a uniform way so that all this blood could be used. And after it, the Department of Defense and the American Red Cross and a few other organizations teamed up to form a task force under the auspices of the International Society for Blood Transfusion called the Working Party on Automation and Data Processing. Bruce Ray and I were deeply involved with it. He sucked me into it. And basically we decided we had to do two things. One, we had to get rid of the text as being normative. Because if you had text, then you had natural languages. And if you had natural languages, you had 200 of them at least. And it was impossible to use it. And so we decided the first rule was we would convert all the critical information to barcodes, which could be read by anybody anywhere using a barcode scanner. And that would be non-textual information. And the cell phone hadn't been invented yet, but it was to play a critical part in all this. But the idea was by converting everything to barcodes, you could find a device that could at least read the barcodes and give the data to you in your natural language, regardless of where the blood was collected. The second thing was that we had to develop a system for collection that identified every unit of blood collected in the world over a long period of time. In this case, it was, I think, 99 years. And because everything will expire before 99 years, even frozen stuff. And so we developed an international system of identifying every blood collection site in the world. And this helped with the language problem. It more importantly helped with the traceability problem, because you could trace back to the exact point the blood was collected if there was a problem. So that was the main work of the working party on automation and data processing, and we published a standard in 1994. Which had been ratified by the International Society for Blood Transfusion for international use. And that became the ISBT 128. And it was a barcode standard. And more importantly, it designed data structures which were infinitely extensible so that we could accommodate other biological products such as cells, etc. And that took about 25 years to implement. Lisbon, at the WHO meeting, they basically accepted ISBT 128 as the international standard for labeling all products of human origin. Everything from breast milk, cells, blood, transplantable organs, etc., was going to be labeled in ISPT 128, and the data structures would be developed within that barcode system by the organizations that knew the products best.